Teal here. Stop me if you've heard this one before. A guy and a girl meet up to have consensual sex. After the consensual sex has happened, a third party takes it upon themselves to decide that the guy raped the girl. Said third party levels the accusation of rape and then convinces the girl that she was in fact raped by the guy. Oh, you have heard of this before, have you? That doesn't really surprise me, considering back in May we looked at the Neil Grant case in the video The Consensual Rape of Jane Doe, where that exact series of events happened. But now it's happened again, to a different guy. Zach Kibberidge, an England under-20s winger who plays for the Newcastle Falcons in the Aviva Rugby Premiership. So let's have a little look-see at this case, shall we, because it's rather an interesting one. And to give us a reasonably comprehensive view of the entire happening, we're going to be looking at 3 articles covering this from beginning to end. And we're going to see just how the narrative changes over time. And I'll also be referencing a 4th article from the Daily Mail because it just happens to have a few extra pieces of information that the Telegraph doesn't publish in its initial 3. Let's go! Rising rugby star raped girl he met on Tinder, court hears. A rising English rugby star told a girl he met on the Tinder dating app, "You know you want this," as he raped her using fear and force, a jury has been told. Zach Kibberidge, 21, an England under-20s winger who plays for Newcastle Falcons in the Aviva Premiership, was invited to the student's home after they made contact via the popular website. The 21-year-old girl had intended the date to involve nothing more than a film and a cuddle, but Kibberidge forced her into degrading sex acts, a court was told. The muscular winger used his superior strength to overpower his alleged victim, leaving her in a state of shock and distress. Please note here, that is the language of the writer of this article, not a quote from any of the court documents or anyone who was interviewed surrounding this. Prosecutor Chris Smith told Newcastle Crown Court she said no to this defendant when he arrived at her house. She had to immediately before the sexual assault started, when the defendant began kissing and touching her in ways she didn't want. She told him to pack it in, but her request went ignored. The bigger, faster and stronger professional rugby player was not listening, and he used force and fear to get what he wanted, and then left. Mr. Smith told the jury, "Here there was no room for confusion, no mixed messages. This was simply a young man out for what he could get, out for what he thought he could get away with." So let's skip on down to hear some of the nitty-gritty details about this alleged rape, shall we? Because this description is rather important given some of the later evidence that comes forward about it. The complainant told the court, "He came around to watch a film. I told him I didn't want anything. Then after 5 or 10 minutes, he kept on trying to put his hands down my trousers and my top. I was on the bed, on top of the duvet. I told him I didn't want that. I said no. I told him to pack it in. He was kissing my neck. He got on top of me, took my trousers off, took my top half off, and started to have sex with me. He had my hands on my shoulders, so I was pinned down and couldn't get up. Then he stopped and sat on my chest with his full body weight. He grabbed my hair, he pulled on the bobble of my hair, and forced me to give him oral sex. He had his hand on my throat. I could not speak or swallow. Every time I tried to speak, he put his hand around my throat. I thought it was better not to speak." She added, "When he was finished, he wiped himself with a towel, got dressed, and left." Okay, so that's a pretty graphic description of what was going on, isn't it? It sounds very violent, very aggressive, thoroughly unpleasant. Let's see how this expands out only a few days later. Please note that this article was authored on the 4th of August 2016. The second article that we're going to read comes out on the 8th of August 2016. A rising rugby star accused of raping a student he met on Tinder has admitted making an excuse and leaving her home just minutes after their sexual encounter. England under-21 and Newcastle Falcons winger Zach Kiberich, 21, revealed the girl had told him she felt as if she had been bucked and ditched after he left, telling her he had to be up early for training. Well, that's a slightly different version of the story, isn't it? And here we have from the Daily Mail article, the court heard how the victim messaged him with a thumbs up emoji after he left her home, followed by the message which said, bucked and ditched. Mr. Kiberich said he replied to her message by saying, you just come for an hour. Oh! Fucking burned like a boss! Seriously though, compare and contrast. He raped me and made me do all of these horrible, terrible things, and it was so violent and traumatic. I felt like he left too quickly after having sex with me because he didn't give me the cuddling that I wanted, so I taunted him afterwards. One of these things is not like the other things. One of these things just doesn't belong. Can you guess which thing is not like the other things before I finish this song? Mr. Kiberich told police, I made my excuses saying I had to be up early to train and I couldn't stick around and stuff. I asked if she could let me out and said goodbye. Newcastle Crown Court heard how she began messaging Mr. Kiberich after he drove home, saying she felt she had been bucked and ditched, also writing, I didn't think you were just going to treat me like that, not just sleep with me and then leave. Minutes after she had messaged the Aviva Premiership star protesting about his quick exit, her flatmate messaged and accused him of rape, the jury heard. Okay, so you're on Tinder expecting relationship material. Well, I guess you probably don't know what most people use Tinder for these days. It's basically just a casual sex hookup site. Second of all, if this guy genuinely raped you, as per your very graphic description earlier, why the fuck are you messaging him afterwards, taunting him about it, and complaining that he left too quickly? God damn it, patriarchy, we need to step our game up. Turns out our rapists are leaving the scene too quickly afterwards. My mind honestly boggles at this. Getting raped by someone and wanting that person to stick around you afterwards are pretty much mutually exclusive sentiments. And throughout this case, one of the things that amuses me is the kind of questioning that this guy was subjected to, because it screams out and highlights the importance of the women as victims narrative and the misogyny card. Asked by his barrister Nicholas Lumley QC, did you rape her? Mr. Kiberich replied, absolutely not. And asked whether he had done anything against her will, he answered, no, I did not. Mr. Lumley asked, do you respect women? He replied, absolutely. The barrister asked, was that a key part of the way you were brought up? And Kiberich replied, most definitely. It always strikes me as so odd that these are questions that have to be asked, because at no point, if a male was a victim of a crime, would any barrister examine a witness and say, so, do you respect men? Were you brought up to respect men? This is something that will probably never happen. And yet, we still have this bizarre idea that how someone treats women specifically, and women exclusively, is in some way some sort of indicator of that person's moral stature. And this is something which we see very frequently, and is something particularly irksome. This idea that if a woman is a victim of a crime, it suddenly becomes some sort of slight against all women, and you just have to confirm that this guy doesn't hate all women because of a slight against one woman. And even then, this is a slight in this woman's own mind. It's something of her own creation because she didn't get the cuddling after sex that she thought she was entitled to. And I'd just like to dial back a few seconds here and highlight the fact that the person who made the accusation of rape initially here was not the woman with whom this guy had sex. It was her roommate, who was the one who sent the message to him accusing him of raping her. And clearly this friend of this roommate, the person who actually had sex with this guy, obviously got on board with this idea at some point in order to actually then go ahead and make the formal accusation. Now, we can hypothesize numerous reasons as to why a third party would feel the need to make a rape accusation. As was the case in the previous video where we looked at a case similar to this, one could hypothesize jealousy. Your friend is getting railed by a hot athlete, you get a little bit envious, well, how can I ruin this entire thing for them? I know, rape accusation. Or because this guy is a semi-professional athlete in this regard, it could just be well, he's kind of famous, so bringing a rape accusation against him will surely get us a fuck ton of money. After all, you get to sell your story to a shitload of newspapers and magazines, and in some cases it's not uncommon for the athlete themselves or for one of their sponsors or their club to simply pay out to settle outside of court. And these are just two potential explanations. There are, of course, many others. In an interview read to the court, Kiberich told the officers, "We were biting each other on the neck and ears. We were pulling each other's hair. We were holding and grabbing. She was forceful and passionate. I was as well, but it was reciprocal. I was thinking not to be too soft or too rough. I was not too rough." The court also heard from a police officer how Kiberich told them during a recorded interview that she teased him during sex by telling him, "You're going to have to try harder than that." When asked by an officer what he thought she meant by that, he said, "You're going to have to make me feel more aroused," or something like that. Try harder to do that. So once again, we're treading down this path where we have two people having consensual sex, with the girl doing the metaphorical, or in this case probably quite literal, riding of the dick shouting, "Oh yes, fuck me daddy!" and then retroactively deciding because the sex wasn't good enough, or in this case because she didn't get the afterplay that she wanted, with all of the extra cuddling, kissing, stroking, whatever as some sort of wind down, that this means that he clearly raped her. So over the course of 4 days, from the 4th of August to the 8th of August, we've gone from it was rape with a very graphic description to it was probably not rape. In fact, it appears to be mostly consensual. In fact, they just had sex, and she then retroactively decided that it wasn't what she wanted. And now to the 9th of August, rugby star accused of raping girl he met on Tinder cleared of all charges. After the verdict, Mr. Kiberich said, "It is a relief that it's over, and now I just want to spend some time with my family." Which brings us nicely and neatly to the penultimate paragraph of this article, and one which I think really needs to be highlighted. The case is likely to lead to further calls for rape suspects to be granted anonymity until conviction, after a string of similar charges which saw the accused unanimously cleared by a jury in a short space of time. And this is something which I believe really needs to come to the forefront here. Have you noticed how this guy's name and this guy's face has been all over all of these articles, and yet we have no idea who the false accuser is? And to date, I have yet to find any evidence that any sort of legal action is being taken against this woman who falsely accused this guy of raping her. But hey guys, never forget,
false reports are illegal, and they're typically taken pretty seriously when they surface.
Which is why in this final article talking about how this guy was falsely accused of rape, all it actually does is basically give you a summary of what happened in the days leading up to this verdict. There is not a paragraph, not even a single sentence in this article condemning the actions of this woman who brought the false rape accusation against this man. The closest it gets to condemning this woman's actions is saying that it's likely to lead to further calls for rape suspects to be granted anonymity. That is it.